Hi, I'm Christina. Welcome to this episode of Women's Health, Wealth, and Happiness Interviews to Inspire. Our next guest is a seasoned clinical social worker and the founder of PRN Counseling, a boutique psychotherapy practice in Maryland. Her vision was to build a practice that brings compassion, focusing on a holistic approach to therapy, looking at the full picture of a client. By tailoring the therapeutic experience to each client through creativity and active engagement, she and her team motivate clients and bring more harmony to their lives and their families. As a mother of three, under the age of 7, she truly understands the complexities of family dynamics and balancing roles. To her health, wealth, and happiness lie in being fully present. Please join me in welcoming clinical social worker Pamela.
So I am a third generation Washingtonian, which is pretty rare, but I grew up in this area and then I moved away for a bit and came back. I started my practice in 2012 and now there are currently 4 people working for my practice. We are in North Bethesda and we see ages 8 to 98 for individual therapy, couples counseling, parent coaching, group therapy, and we focus mainly on managing depression, anxiety, and those who are diagnosed with ADHD.
Pam, I love your choice of word.
Yeah.
Your health word is present. Tell us more about present as it relates to health.
I think a lot of us, well, especially moms, tend to ignore what's going on with them so they can focus on what they need to do in the moment. And I think as humans, a lot of the time we avoid anything discomfort, like anything uncomfortable, any discomfort. We don't want to feel it. We don't want to experience it. So we do things to block it out, be it doom scrolling or using a substance or eating or shopping or just avoiding in general. I think throughout our lives, a lot of the time we ignore what's going on in our bodies so that we can go through the day to day. We push through so we can get to work. We can't have a sick day. We can't have a this day. We just need go, 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 get it done. And I think presence is checking in with our bodies, figuring out what's going on with us, figuring out why we're feeling that way. Is it anxiety? Is it stress? Is it an actual physical illness? Starting to be present and pay attention and stop ignoring those cues. A lot of us I grew up with the rub some dirt on it. It's fine. Rub some dirt on it. It'll be fine. Or you're fine. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. And then we start at that young age to just ignore, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. And then we miss things. I was thinking about a little story. So my father was a physician. He was an internist and an oncologist. And when I was in high school, a bunch of my friends had mono. And I was in a play with people, and this was in the 90s. And part of it was we were sharing drinks, like we were actually sharing a drink as part of the play. And I'm like, Dad, I'm pretty sure I have mono. And he's like, no, you don't. You don't have mono. And I'm like, can you please test me for mono? Like, I keep getting sick. I'm tired all the time. There's something wrong. He's like, mono. I'm like, just test me. So he tests me and he's like, you have mono. And I'm like, I knew it. And we go through day to day life not paying attention to these things. So that's why I said presence in terms of health. It's check in with yourself every day. If you're feeling off, why? There's a reason, be it something going on in your life, be it, again, actual physiological concern.
And when you notice that in people you're working with, that it's beyond your scope of maybe the mental wellness, how do you guide them?
For every client I see, and this is why I say I'm holistic, every client I see, I want to make sure they're ruling out there's no thyroid issues, there's no vitamin D deficiencies, there's no general blood work problems. If someone's coming in and saying they're having headaches could mean 100 different things. You're dehydrated, you are drinking too much caffeine, not drinking enough caffeine, you are stressed, you are clenching your jaw, you're not sleeping well. It could be any number of things. So I'm going to say, I'm going to ask, how are you sleeping? What else is going on? But also, I'm going to say, please check with your doctor. Please get blood work done. When's the last time you had blood work done? Because I want to make sure, yes, there are psychological things underlying any of it, but I also want to make sure there's nothing physiological that's causing all of these problems. I don't want to miss anything.
Yeah, and the holistic approach just makes sense. I just had this conversation with the last guest, and we talked about how our mind is connected to our body is connected to
Absolutely.
our mind. So just like you're saying, it's like, boy, I'm having headaches. Is it because there's something else going on, or is it just stress? But then
Right.
stress causes all these other
Yeah.
chemical
Yeah.
reactions.
Yes. There's a lot more research on how the brain impacts the body in terms of trauma, in terms of how our brain rewires based on experiences and trauma. It's so important to look at everything and not just brush something off as, oh, you're having headaches. You need to pay attention to these things. This is, again, the presence. You need to be paying attention and not just saying, oh, I'm fine. Oh, they're fine.
It's funny having a doctor as a mother myself. We siblings as adults now laugh of going, if it's not sticking out or bleeding, you're fine.
Right. 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 And yes, there is an element to that where, we don't want to make a bigger deal out of something that is not life or death, but we also want to make sure we're attuning to our needs, attuning to our children's needs, and validating, if my daughter is saying, I have a really bad cough, or even, it's I have a boo boo. It's checking in and saying, oh, you like, oh, it's okay, honey. Like, I understand that hurts, and validating how they're feeling rather than just saying, rub some dirt in. Like,
Yes.
you're fine. You're fine.
And that really is such a different part of parenthood today, of
Hmm.
actually finding out what are you going through. It's just
Hmm.
don't stick a band-aid on it and go. But yeah,
Right.
it's I have emotions behind getting hurt.
Yeah. If children can learn to validate and understand their own emotions at that age, then as adults, they're more in touch with themselves and they get it more and they are able to be more present and self aware and give themselves warm fuzzies.
In your job, do you have different ages? What's the youngest you said you had?
Well, so within my practice, we see ages 8 to 90. So different therapists within my practice see different ages. Right now, my youngest client is probably 13. I've seen younger. I mostly will either see adolescents or adults.
What is the biggest difference in the generations that you're currently seeing?
There's so much more information that is accessible about mental health. And that's a wonderful thing, but it can also be a very bad thing. Especially a teenager will see something on TikTok and come in and say, I have this. I have depersonalization disorder. And I'm like, you have to validate that they're experiencing something that they're not feeling like themselves. But the difference between this is a disorder and this is something you're experiencing, it's a balance. So I'd say the biggest difference is I think younger teenagers are much more savvy than they used to be in a lot of ways and exposed. Older generations, my age and older, we didn't grow up knowing these things. There is so much more information and education out there. And I think if you seek it out, it's great. But I think it's developing more of an acceptance of, hey, I need help, I need support. It's okay to go to therapy, it's okay to reach out, it's okay to have someone to talk to in this safe space to voice my concerns and talk through things and have a sounding board and process any, intergenerational trauma and things that have happened to you in your life. A lot of us have been through really challenging experiences, and a lot of us were just like, keep on going. And it is important to keep going, but it's also important to, again, check in and say, how has this impacted me? How did it affect me? How did it affect my relationships? How does it affect me today? Because those things do carry over and they influence us.
Yes, absolutely. I heard something years ago. that someone said, and this is extreme, of course, but you're either going to be exactly like the way your parents reared you, or you're going to be the exact opposite of the way they reared you. And I think there's a happy medium in there.
I think there is a happy medium. And, I definitely open my mouth sometimes when my mother comes out. I'm not going to lie. We all do. Every day, it's learning more and more. How do I want to be as an adult? And I'm lucky that I'm able to do that.
Yeah, and getting in touch with those emotions, that person that you've always been, but figuring out how to get over the something that you were told, well, be quiet right now. And then that person's like, oh, always quiet when they have such a voice that they want to bring out. It's amazing the work that you do when it comes to this. And a lot of your clients are teenagers, your
Yeah.
person. What an
Yeah.
age.
I love it. I love it. I love it because that is the age where people are really discovering themselves and who they want to be outside of their parents and how they want to be in the world and what they want to do with themselves. I think it's such a fun age to work with. I knew I wanted to work with teenagers when I first started practicing. Now, of course, I also love working with moms and adults. Give me those teenagers. I love working with teenagers. I love working with their families. I think it's such an important age.
What was your inspiration to get into this industry?
A lot of different things. I think a lot of it was I've always been a big feeler. And it was what you said, I learned in my life, like, you can't feel that much in front of other people. They won't be able to hold it. People don't like big feelings. I learned, I had to really contain it in myself, but that wasn't how I wanted to be all the time. I didn't want to just be, how I need to be in society. And I think it's important to teach people, like, your feelings are valid, your feelings are important, your feelings are telling you something, they're sending messages, your emotions are there for a reason. I always wanted to work with kids and teens. I think it was just always something I was drawn to. And I wanted people to be able to have the outlet at that age, to have someone to talk to have someone that would understand them, that wasn't their parent and wasn't going to judge them and tell them, like, no, you're doing it wrong.
Now, and a big word that's used a lot right now is authentic self. How
Yeah.
do you feel about that, especially when you have a teenage girl who's looking online, who wants to be our authentic self, and then suddenly she feels she can't, she has to be something else? What is your take on authentic self?
I think we're taught in society not to be our authentic self and to be who we're supposed to be. Things are changing a lot. I think in terms of working with teens, it is figuring out how to get them to understand, this is who I want to be. These are the qualities that I like about myself. These are my strengths. These are what I can bring to the table, as they say. And these are the things I want to build on. Most teenagers are pretty insecure. I think it's that age where it's, should I be doing this? Should I be doing that? How should I be, seeing people on Instagram and TikTok and wanting to do the beauty tutorials and dress a certain way and be a certain way. And I think authentic self is hard to find because there's so many shoulds. If one can identify, I don't need to deal with all these shoulds. I need to do what feels good to me, as long as it's not hurting other people, but I need to do what feels good to me and what feels comfortable and how I feel good in my own skin. And that's really hard for teenagers. I mean, it's hard for adults to figure that out. I think being authentic has to do with a lot of the listening to your gut, as they say. And that's with the being present and checking in. And if you get that feeling like this doesn't feel right, are you being authentic? Because a lot of that instinct of, I don't like the way this feels, like this is icky, you're probably not being your authentic self.
I mean, it's just that simple. Go with your gut. It knows.
It does. And most of us have ignored our gut for so long. But if you think about, your gut, it's really interesting when you think about the fight or flight response. What happens when we go into the fight or flight response is that our digestion slows down. So we do get that icky feeling in our gut. We get that knot in our stomach, the flipping, that something's off. And it is a physiological response. And if we can check in with ourselves, take a couple deep breaths and ask ourselves, like, what was just happening? What was I just experiencing? What was that cue I just got from myself? That's where we can find where to go.
And what kind of practices or advice would you give to somebody learning to be present in their own health?
A lot of trauma practitioners talk about just doing a simple body scan, like start at your toes, go up to your head. Where are you holding tightness? Where are you holding tension? What feels off? Because we train ourselves to ignore our bodies. And you'll flip through reels and it's like, take a deep breath, relax your jaw, like lower your shoulders, and we do this like all day long and we don't realize we're doing it. Get out of your head. I mean, because you're stuck in the spinning of the brain. Get out of the thoughts. Our thoughts are just thoughts. That's all they are.
Stay tuned to part 2 and learn about the wealth word for this interview. Subscribe and click the link below to find out about bonus tracks and how to join our community.